Hi, everybody, and welcome to the January Bench Buddies. These are the Kimberbell Bench Buddies, and I'm going to pre-record and do videos for the 2 January pillows, so you'll have something to do over the Christmas holidays and the New Year's holiday. And then in February or in January, we'll do the February pillows. So these are the little January ones. This is the rectangle one, and that's the first one we're going to do. And so I did a little differently than they show it in the picture, so I'll just kind of go through some of the things that I've changed. But first we're going to talk about some of the things that you need to cut to do this. So you need, get my book open here. You need a piece of a background fabric, and I chose this kind of gray with the little speckles. It looks like snow. And the one thing it doesn't tell you in here, it's 6.5 by 8.5, but the one thing it doesn't tell you is to put shape flex on it. And so I put shape flex on the back. It's a Pellon SF101, and the shape flex really helps stabilize the fabric and makes it more, and you won't get the puckers and stuff. So I did put shape flex on the back of this. It does not tell you to do that. So I would tell you to cut the shape flex. I think it might say in kind of an extra little thing over here to reduce puckering that we recommend using shape flex. So it's kind of in this little area over here, but it doesn't really tell you to cut it in the instructions. So anyway, I did put shape flex on the back of my main background fabric. Then you need some borders, and these are going to be sewn on. So we're going to do some 1.5 inch borders. So I've got a couple of 1.5 inch borders here, and those are 1.5 by 6.5. And then I'm going to have a couple of borders that are 2.25 by 6. So I think there's a couple of those. So here they are. Here's those. Okay, 2.5 or 2.25 by 6. And then we're going to have a couple back pieces. So there's a back piece that's 6, and they only said 3. And so my originally, when I did these some years ago, that was pretty short. So most of these pillows now have been 6 by 3.5. So this is 6 by 3.5. Okay, so I think it only says 3 in the instructions, but do 3.5. And then the other back piece is 6 by 9.5. Okay, and these are going to be sewn on at the end. So we'll do the sewing after a while, but we're going to do the embroidery first. So there's that. And then you also need a piece that's 4 by 5.5 of the white glitter vinyl. So I've got that here. So that's going to be the little snowman. And you need some, and what I did with mine, instead of putting pom-poms and stuff on mine, I did fringe. So I did fringe on the top and on the bottom of mine. And so I've got a little piece of fringe so that I'm going to sew that into the ends of my pillow. Okay, so there's the little fringe. And you need a piece of, okay, so in the instructions, they tell you to use cutaway stabilizer. And when I do these, I really actually prefer tearaway, because I like to be able to take the stabilizer off. Because when you do a cutaway, it keeps, when you put the pillow form in, sometimes the cutaway kind of likes to wrinkle kind of funny. So I like to be able to take the stabilizer off the back of the main embroidery. So I use tearaway. Okay, so we're going to do this a little differently than they're showing in the instructions. So I've got my piece of tearaway. We're going to use a 5 by 7 hoop for this design. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my design in my machine. I think you all know how to do that, so I won't show you that. I have to find my bench buddies, though. I've lost them. There they are. And it's January, and it's the rectangle one, which it's the little snowman with his earmuffs. He's very cute. And it's 5 by 7 in the 5 by 7 hoop. Okay, so I've got that all set to go. Now what I'm going to do is, it shows you some stuff in here to do, and you need to remove the plastic from the glitter vinyl. So that's the first thing they tell you to do in here, and I'll do that right now so you won't forget. But you always want to take that plastic carrier sheet off of your applique glitter so that you don't have that in your design. So I'm just going to throw that away. We don't need that. And this is going to be our applique material. Put that aside. And then I put the woven stabilizer to the wrong side of the fabric. So they did actually show it in the picture. They don't really tell you to cut it. So it was a little bit confusing, because they changed the way they've done these, some of these designs. And like when they showed you the information of the stuff that you needed on this first page, They didn't talk about the shape flex there, but it did talk about it later in fusible woven stabilizer optional. Okay. And then they show it in the pattern key here. So I had to make sure that I read carefully that I was getting it correct. So anyway, I'll put the shape flex on the back of my fabric. I've got tearaway stabilizer instead of cutaway. So we are going to use tearaway. And then the one thing that I don't do is I don't do all the measuring and everything that they show you on the top of page 3 in the instructions here. I have a tendency to, I know the sun looks really silly, but this seems to work really well for me, and I've been doing it for some time. I'm going to take my piece of fabric with the shape flex on the back. This is why I use shape flex too, because it gives it a lot of body. And I'm going to put some fabric glue stick on the back of my fabric here. Just put some lines up it, like that. And then I'm going to kind of center this fabric on my tearaway stabilizer, like that. These fabric pieces are not quite large enough to hoop, really. They go partially in the hoop. So if you put a little of the glue stick on there, it just sticks it down to the stabilizer. And then I'm just going to hoop this as centered as possible. So I'm going to, this is a little hard to do on the machine, so I'll try to show you. I'll pull the camera back a little bit. It's a little hard to do this on the machine, but I'll see if I can show you at least. I'm going to put this underneath, and I'm going to get this as close to centered as I can with my just eyeballing it. I do the eyeball method. It seems to work for me. And then I'm going to hoop this in the hoop. So you can see that the fabric is partially hooped, but not all the way. There's a little bit on the corners and a little bit on the sides, but that's about it. And I got it as close to center as I could. Okay. So we're going to tighten this down, and then of course I've got my glue stick under here, so it's going to hold everything down for me, which is good. Okay. Get this all in the hoop and tightened up. All right. So I just do things a little differently. I like to use tearaway on these instead of the cutaway. Sometimes I use cutaway if it's like pieced in the hoop, but when they're not pieced in the hoop, I like to take the stabilizer off the back. Okay, so now we're going to start the pattern. So the first step on page 5 of the instructions, or I'm sorry, page 3 of the instructions, says to load the January rectangle file, which we've done, and then the first color is going to be the placement line for the little snowman. So, whoops, I forgot to get my little iron. I'll have to stop the video here in a second and get my little iron out. So we'll get there in a second. So we'll do this part first. I'm going to get my white thread. So I'm going to put some white thread in the machine. I'm using the Brother embroidery threads. I have regular bobbin thread in the bobbin, and I have a number 11 needle in the machine. Okay, so we'll put the white in, and we're going to do the placement line for the little snowman. That's the first step. This was a very fun, fast little pillow, and it turned out really cute. I just did it a little differently because they made it originally with like a little thing to hang it up on a doorknob, and I just put the little fringe on it instead because I kind of like that. All right, so there's our placement line for the little snowman. I don't know if you can see it very well because it's white. I like to use things the same color as what they're going to be, so you can see there's the placement line, okay, for the little snowman. Then we're going to lay the applique glitter down over the placement line, and they give you plenty, just so you know. And you can tape this down if you'd like. I normally just hold it, but it does need to be held at least for a little bit because it's a little slippery on the back. So the second step is going to be the placement line, or the tack down line for this glitter. So yeah, the instructions for this first set, this is the first set of these little bench buddies that they did. So the instructions are a little different. That's why it's a little confusing about the shape flex, because they don't actually have it in the cut list. It's kind of like in that pattern key. So just be careful when you're reading the instructions. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this close to the stitches. I like to use Ginger double curved scissors for that. And I'm going to clip this close to the stitches. Now this is going to be, there's going to be a motif stitch around this. So when you do the tack down line for this, you do want to have it be whatever is matching your motif stitch, because otherwise it will show through, unless you want it to show through. So I did the white, of course, and I'm going to do white for the edging. So we're going to trim around this close to the stitches. I'm going to keep this piece that I have left over for a scrap because I can use this for another project. They give you plenty usually with their pieces. So go around here. Looks like I got a little piece sticking out. There we go. Okay, so there's my little snowman. Now the next step, that was the bottom of page 3, we're going to turn to page 4, is going to be, we're going to press this glitter vinyl. It's glitter vinyl, so it's like heat transfer vinyl. So we're going to iron this down to the fabric with a small iron. So if you give me just a moment, I'm going to pause the video for a moment and go grab my iron. I forgot to get it ready, so just a second. Okay, so I've got my hoop out of my machine. I'm not going to take anything out of the hoop. I'm going to lay it over here on my little wool pressing mat. And I've got my little mini iron here. This is great because this fits inside the hoop, so I don't have to worry about a larger iron. So I'm going to take a pressing cloth. Okay, so I've just got a piece of, or this is like one of my old tea towels. And I'm just going to lay this over the vinyl. And then we're going to press this. Oops, got it caught in my cord. I'm going to press this down for about, I'm going to put a little pressure on it, and for about 20 seconds. And this is wide enough. I'll have to do a couple of presses on it. So we'll get the little snowman pressed down. The reason you're doing this is that it adheres to the fabric so that it won't pucker when you go to sew on it. Now there is quite a bit of stitching on this one, so mine did pucker just ever so slightly because there's actually quite a lot of stitches on it because there's a little scarf and his spaces on it. So I noticed that it did pucker just slightly around his scarf, but it's not that much, and that's why you want to iron it down. So I'm making sure that I've got it good and pressed. Okay. All right, so there's my little snowman. He's pressed down. So you always want to trim, of course, before you press. Otherwise, you're going to have a square stuck to your piece of fabric. All right. So I like to let it cool before I sew on it. So I'm just going to let it cool off for a second here. And then we're going to do, the next step is going to be the motif outline stitch around the little snowman. So I think he's cool enough now. So we'll put him back in. I've still got my white in. And we're going to go ahead and stitch out the little decorative stitch around the outside of the snowman. Now I'll get it started here, and I'll probably just pause the video because this is going to just sew for a little bit. This one takes about the longest because it's a motif stitch that goes around. And I'll pause the video for a minute, I'll let it get started, and then I'll pause it until it's about done. So it's kind of a cute, it's a fairly small motif stitch. So, all right, so I'll pause the video for a minute while this is stitching, and then we'll come back to do the next step. Okay, so we're around. We got the motif stitch all the way around our little snowman. I'll hold it up so maybe you can see a little bit. It's a real cute little decorative stitch. So, okay, and that's all the way around our snowman. Now the next step is going to be his little arms. So I'm going to go ahead and change to brown, and we'll put his little arms on. So this is a really fun project. I enjoyed this one a lot. I made these pillows a long time ago, and so I actually remade them, before doing the videos and stuff, because it's been quite a while ago that I made them, and they are so cute. All right, so here's our little, we're going to do the little arms for the snowman. It's got some little stick arms. Makes him so cute. This part doesn't take very long to stitch. There's a couple spots that take a little bit to stitch, and I'll pause the video a little bit, but we can leave it on for this one. And get the next color ready. He has to do his little fingers. I just used light brown. These are the brother colors, so I used light brown 323, which is one of the older colors. But now you know why you want to iron this down, because it is sewing over onto the glitter vinyl, so that way it's secured down to your fabric. He is really cute, and this one has fringe, so then we're going to do fringe towards the end of this part of the design, and then the rest of him, the putting it together, is all done on the sewing machine, so we'll do a little sewing too. So there's his little stick hands. All right, so the next part is his face, so we're going to do his smile and his little eyeballs. So let me get some black. I did those in black. Let me get my black here. Okay. And then we'll do his eyes and his smile. For some reason, my machine's trying to leave little fingers sticking up, so it's leaving little tails. So we'll have to trim a tail out of his little eye. There we go. And then it's going to do his mouth. I'm going to stop the machine for just a second and get that little end so I won't forget about it. There we go. And it is best to stop the machine when you trim, instead of trying to like chase the tails around while the machine's running. I used to try to do that, but it doesn't work very well, so it's just better to stop the machine. Okay, so I have a little tail here on his mouth too, so I'm going to pull this up and give it a little trim. Okay, so now the next color is his little nose, so I'm going to make that orange. So I've got orange peel. That's one of my favorite oranges. It's kind of a lighter orange, and it's 0112 in the brother threads. This is orange peel, so we'll make his nose. And then we'll move on to his scarf. So we'll get his nose done. Let's see, I think the scarf I'm making green and red. And we'll make his little, and this was a really cute little, like, kind of an embossed fill stitch, so it's kind of neat. It has kind of a cool little embossed look to it. All right, there's his nose. About done. Okay, so the next part is going to be a scarf. Now a scarf has two colors, and there's also some fringe in the scarf. So let me get this little tail here. And I'm going to start with moss green for his scarf here. Let me get my green. This is step number 7 on the machine. And it's step number 10 in the instructions. So we get that. Now this one's going to take a little bit, so I'll get it started and then I'll pause the video while this one's sewing, because this one does take a little bit. Now this part does not, the green, the first part does not have the fringe. It's the second part that has the fringe. So we'll get this one started and I'll pause the video while it's sewing. So he has a little striped scarf on that has two colors in it. All right, so I'll go ahead and pause the video while it's stitching. It's going to take a little bit, and then we'll come back and get ready to do the second part, which is going to have some fringing. Okay, so it's just finishing up the first color of his little scarf, and now we're going to switch over and I'm going to use red for the second color of it, and then this one's going to have a little bit of fringe. So there's going to be some fringe on the bottom of his little scarf. I can show you on the other pillow. So we'll get this started and I'll show you on the pillow where the fringe is. It sews out the same, but you will do something at the end. So, okay, so this is the second color of the scarf and I'm using a red. I'm going to make his earmuffs red, I think, too. All right, so here's the little fringe on the scarf. You can see the little ends of his scarf are fringed. Okay, and then we'll do the fringe on the little earmuffs. They're so cute. All right, so I'll go ahead. It's doing the fringe right now, actually. So what it does for fringe is it does a very wide satin stitch, but then it does like a locking stitch so that it locks in and holds those stitches in so they won't come out we're going to cut through the bobbin thread. So it does like a locking stitch on top of the fringe. I think it's doing the fringe right now though. I think it was at the bottom, like right now, and then it does like this locking stitch on the top of it to keep it from coming out once we cut through the bobbin thread. So that's really cute. I like the red and green scarf. The color I used on the first pillow, evidently, I don't know what I did with it. I can't find it. So we're going to have a different color of earmuffs and scarf on this one because I can't find my other thread. It happens sometimes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this is stitching. So it already did the fringe part, and now it's going to go back and do the rest of the little stripes. Okay, so it's just finishing up the scarf here. Got a little tail that's kind of hanging out, so we'll just do a little slip there. And the next section is so this is where the little fringe is going to be down here at the bottom. And then the next section is going to be his little earmuffs. So again, the earmuffs are going to have fringe, so it's going to do the fringe on the outside part of the earmuffs here. Let me show you on the little pillow. So it's going to do some kind of long satin stitches on the side, and then we're going to clip through the bobbin threads to make those cute little earmuffs. So here's the start of the earmuffs. It will take a few minutes for that to stitch out, so I'll probably pause the video for here too while we let it stitch out. So it's going to do the top of the earmuffs first, and then it's going to start doing the two little muffs where the fringe is. So we'll show you how to do the trimming here in a little bit. We're going to finish the whole embroidery first. So in the instructions, they actually tell you to do trim the bobbin threads on the back before you finish it, but I like to finish the whole thing before I do that. So that's how we're going to do it. So I'll go ahead and pause the video for a minute while this finishes up his little earmuffs. Okay, so it just finished up his earmuffs. And you can kind of see when you're looking at it from the front that there's these longer satin stitches like here, and then there's these little short ones that are on the top, and those are like trapping. I think they call them trapping stitches, and it keeps, the little satin stitches from coming out once we cut the bobbin thread in the back. So it does tell you again in the instructions, step number 13, 14, and 15 is telling you to go ahead and do all the fringing now, but I like to wait till all the embroidery is done. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue on to the last step, which is going to be the lettering at the bottom, and then we'll go back and do the fringe. So I'm going to put the black back in, and it's going to stitch out that there's no place like home. So I'm going to do that in black. Get that back in the machine. And so we'll get it started, and then I'll go ahead and pause the video while it's sewing because it takes a little bit for the letters, and then we will come back and I'll show you how to do the fringe. It's good. It's kind of a neat little triple stitch straight, like they're not satin stitch letters, so little triple stitch letters. These are pretty small. So I'll go ahead and pause the video while this is stitching, and then I'll come back and we'll do the fringing. Okay, so it just finished up the lettering. Now, and I was going to show you a little trick that I've learned lately about Kimberbell has these wonderful little pointy tweezers, and they come in the box of scissors, and the scissors and the um, tools. And this is so nice because I have a hard time getting a hold of these little jump clips, and you can grab a hold of these with that little tweezer, and you can and actually the tweezers has a little sharp point on, a little sharp edge on it too, that you can actually cut. But I like this because I can get a hold of the jump clips and pull them up so that I can trim them easier. And when these are really small ones, so it is nice to use the tweezers for this. I don't always have to, but like this one, the little jumps are so short, it's just so hard to get a hold of them. And so I just grab my tweezer and pull up the little jump, and then I can get my scissors in around them. And the micro tip scissors work really good for the jumps, but I usually just use my little double curved ones here. But with this little tweezer, you can really get a hold of it and pull up the little tails like that. So that makes it easier to trim those little boogers. They're so small. It's hard to get a hold of them. There's another one right here that's just really hard to get into, to get a hold of it. Oops, haven't quite got a hold of it yet. And then I can get a hold with the scissor and trim it. But it just pulls it up. So these are really great. I bought the scissor set just to get these little tweezers, because and there's actually a sharp edge on the one side, so that you can actually use, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a sharp edge right in here that'll actually cut the thread too. So that works really well when you're trying to get a hold of these little short ones and get a hold of them to trim them. There we go. That looks better. Whoops, I think there's still one in here. Let's see if I've got one here. If I can get my, but these are really sharp on the ends, so you can really get them in there and get a hold of those little jumps. That's much better. All right, so we got that. Now we're going to do the fringe. And something just hit the floor. I hope it wasn't my seam ripper. Guess not. Okay, so now the fringe, I'm going to leave it in. I like to leave them in the hoop to do the fringing because it's just a little easier to get a hold of things. So we're going to turn it over to the back, and let's do the scarf first because it's probably the easiest. So I'm going to get this a little closer. And you can see that there's a little white where the bobbin thread is right here. And the other trick is you can use like a different color bobbin thread, like pink or, something other than the white. And then what I'm doing is I'm sliding my seam ripper underneath and just cutting through that bobbin thread. Okay. Then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to take the end of my seam ripper, like the little tip of my seam ripper, and I'm just going to pull along those little scarf ends and make them come out of the fabric. And these are a little tougher because this fabric is, this is that glitter vinyl, so it kind of sticks in there a little bit more, but sometimes I have to take my fingernail to finish it. There we go. With the glitter vinyl, because sometimes they don't stay in there. There we go. It looks good. So then there's my little fringed scarf. You see the little ends here. I'll pull this back just a little bit. Here, so there's my little fringed ends for my scarf. Okay. Now we need to do the earmuffs. Now there's 5 little spots on the earmuffs on each side, so you can kind of see where the stitches, the bobbin thread stitches are right here, so you can see them. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each side. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to trim this little end, get it out of my way here. These little ends are kind of in the way. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim, see if I can get a little bit closer. I'm going to slide my seam ripper carefully underneath the first row there. And you can do it slowly. You don't have to do the whole row at a time. You can just do a little bit at a time. And I'm just going to try to cut just through the bobbin threads. Now, these are a little bit harder to see, so sometimes if you cut through the top thread, it's okay, because not all fringe has to be loopy. I actually like it to be fringed because then it kind of frays out a little bit, and I kind of like it. So I'm just going to cut through all 5 of these. And I like to leave it in the hoop because it's just a little more taut and it's just easier to, you know, it's easier to get a hold of it, I think. Okay, so we're going to turn this one over. And I'm going to do the same thing with my seam ripper kind of on the back of it. I'm just going to take this in and loosen those little tails. So I don't think I got, I'm not sure if I got all my bobbin thread on that one. May have to go back to the back. So I think I missed a couple on that one. Here's this one. I just kind of work my way up. I'm not sure. I think I might have missed a couple spots. So it's a little harder to get it to come up with the glitter vinyl because it's a little stiff. So let me notice. There we go. Let's check on the other side and see if I got, there might be a couple spots I missed here. So let's look and make sure I got all the bobbin thread. There was a little spot there. Let's see if I got everything. I noticed there was one spot on the inside that didn't come out very well. So let's see if I got it. Okay. I might have got it. There we go. So there's this little fuzzy earmuff. Now, if you think that, you know, if you think that there's like a stray hair, we'll do that in a second here. Sometimes I have to trim, you know, a stray hair. Sometimes I get a little over exuberant and there's a stray hair. So let's do the other side here and do the same thing. There's 5 little sections. 1. Oops, here. This one's kind of hard to get. There we go. 2. There's the 3rd one. 3. And you don't have to try to do it all in one shot if you don't want to. I usually try to, but I don't always make it. And I didn't make it that time. And then here's the last one. This one's the hard one to get, this top one, because it's kind of tight. There we go. And then, but you can see in the picture, so also if you look at this picture here, see how they show you the little lines, so that there's 5 different little lines on each side. So they show it to you here, so that way you know you're cutting in the right spot. All right, let's see how we did here. So we got to turn this one over and see if we can get this one. Put this down a little bit. Here's the bottom layer. So I do better with my seam ripper than I usually finish with my fingernail, but I don't always do very well to start with my fingernail. So let's see here. If I got them all. Let's check it on the other side here. Looks pretty good. And then I'll miss one. Okay, so he needs to have a little bit of a haircut, so we'll do a couple little, see there's a couple little ends that are just kind of straggly, so we'll just give him a little clip. There's that one. There's one here. We'll just give it a little clip. So I often have to do this. I remember doing one of the very first things I ever did in Fringe. It was like grass. So I thought, well, I have to know the grass because it was just a little bit. There's a couple little stragglers, you know. Let's get that. Another one here. Gonna grab my little tweezer. I can't get a hold of that one. It keeps evading me. There we go. There we go. There's his little fringe. He's got little fringy earmuffs. That looks cute. All right. So we got the fringe done. So what do you think? Got the fringe on the bottom of the scarf and then his little earmuffs. They look so cute. And oops, I still got a little straggler, don't I? Give it a little trim. This little straggler right here. Got one sticking up right here too. So you can always give it a little trim. That looks better. What do you think? So there's his little earmuffs. So cute. So now we're going to take this out of the hoop. This was all of page 5. And then on the top of page 6, in the instructions, we're going to do the trimming. So what I'm going to do is I need to move the camera over to my cutting table. It's easier for me to trim over at my cutting table. So I'm going to take this out of the hoop, and I'm going to leave the stabilizer on because I like to trim this with the stabilizer on and then remove the stabilizer. So I've got it out of the hoop, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to just do a little press with the iron around the edges. Don't touch the little snowman because you don't want to melt the vinyl, okay? So I'm just going to press around the edges a little bit, and then I'm going to move the camera over to my sewing table or to my cutting table so it's easier for me to trim this for you. Okay, so I switched the camera over to my cutting table, and it's a little bit dark over here, so I apologize, but it's a lot easier for me to cut standing up than it is for me to try to cut near the machine. But I'm going to show you a couple of things first that we're going to use to cut this. These are the Kimberbell orange pop rulers. These are the rectangle rulers, and they also have square rulers. These are awesome, and they're very common sizes, so they work for any other things. But if you're going to be doing a bunch of these little bench pillows or the quilts and stuff, just invest in these rulers. They're so wonderful. And then, so I got my 2 rulers here. We're going to be cutting this down to 4.5 by 6.5. So when they call them orange pop rulers, they do that for a reason because they all slip inside of each other. So I like to at least have 2 when I'm cutting if I can, because it just gives me a little bit more room to hang on to when I'm trying to trim, okay? So we're going to be doing this, and we're going to choose the block size, which is 4.5 by 6.5, okay? And then the other thing I wanted to show you is this revolving mat. This is a Martelli mat, and all of these are on our website, shieldsewingcenter.com. So the orange pop rulers are up there, and so are these Martelli cutting mats. And these are they turn. They have like a lazy Susan on the bottom. And I've tried other cutting mats that turn like this, but this one actually does turn. It has a lazy Susan instead of having like a square thing and a round thing go together. Some of the revolving mats don't work very well. So this one's awesome. So I also use a Martelli rotary blade, a rotary cutter. So that's what this one is, and it's ergonomic for my wrists. Okay, so what I did with my little guy so here's my little snowman. I went ahead and I just pressed along the edges so that it's flat, and I left my stabilizer in. Okay, then it says in the instructions to visually center the embroidered design on the cutting mat, and then you're going to choose the 4.5 by 6.5 inch ruler. Now what they do when they cut these generally is they have you leave about an inch all the way around the pieces of fabric, and so then you kind of just need to line up the fabric edges with the ruler. But this one I noticed that he was a little bit to the left in the hoop, so I'm going to visually try to get him centered here with that, and it looks pretty good up and down, but I was a little bit to the left, so I'm going to move this over to the right. See, I've got a little fabric sticking out right here, so, but I think that looks a little bit more centered now. And I just do it kind of by eyeball. You can measure if you want. You can go and measure each side if you want to, but I usually kind of just eyeball it. And then I'm going to put in the next size bigger ruler around this just to help me hang on to it a little bit. These rulers come with these little, put them on the back, these little pads. They're like little rubber pads, and then they keep the rulers from slipping for you. So I really like that. So that looks pretty good. I think that looks good. Now, the difference in these rulers, so it depends on the person. If you have a little trouble, we're going to be cutting on the inside. So if you're uncomfortable doing that, you can take a fabric marker or pen, and you can mark the inside with the pen, and then you can take your regular rotary ruler and cut them. Now, I've actually gotten pretty good with these. The trick is to turn it towards, I'm left-handed, so I'm going to be cutting with my left hand. So I'm going to turn it towards the right, towards me, and I'm going to put my right hand on the ruler, and I'm going to be cutting inside the ruler towards the opposite side of my hand. So if you're right-handed, you're going to be starting up here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place my blade in the corner. I'm going to pull back just a little bit, and then I'm going to push forward. And I've got the inside of my blade against the inside of the ruler. And then I'm going to turn this towards me and do the same thing on this side. So I'm always working on, it's the opposite. So like I'm left-handed, so I'm going to be working on the right, okay? And if you're right-handed, you're going to be working on the left. And after you, and just be deliberate and slow working with these, you will have no problems. It took me a little while to get used to them, so I just kind of practiced with some scrap fabric cutting with them, because it just feels different cutting on the inside of the ruler. But certainly if you have trouble, just go ahead and use the marking pen, and then you can use a regular rotary cutter or a regular rotary ruler then to do it. Okay, so here's my little guy. Got him all cut out, and he's 4.5 by 6.5. Okay, so now I can remove the stabilizer. So here's my piece, and I'm going to just put that aside, and now I'm going to actually remove the stabilizer. So I'm just going to check to make sure he turned out the right size. 4.5 by 6.5. Yep, perfect. Okay. So then I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to pull off as much of the tearaway stabilizer as I can. I'm not going to worry about the inside of the little guy, just around the edges. So just do the best you can. You don't need to get it all off, but I like the tearaway better than the cutaway. It's a little softer when you're done. But I never cut it. I never tear it off on the inside. I just go around the basic outside edges, like around these letters, the best I can. So it's not going to be perfect, but it'll be fine. Okay. But it does seem to fit. I have a little trouble with the cutaway making little puckers when I put the pillow form in. So that's why I like the tearaway. So, okay. There we go. I got most of it off. I don't like that. So there he is. So here he's all trimmed with the orange pop rulers and the Martelli mat. They call this a roundabout. I couldn't think of the name of it when we were talking about it earlier. So they call it the Martelli roundabout. And it comes with the mat, it's a set, the mat, the Lazy Susan, and then there's also a ironing pad. That's nice, because sometimes you need an ironing pad that revolves as well. So they have all three pieces with it. So, and that's up on their website, on the shieldsewingcenter.com website as well. Okay, so now he's all trimmed. We're ready to go. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to move the camera back to the machine, and then we're going to do some sewing. So we're going to start sewing our little guy together. Okay, so I've set my machine up for sewing, and I have put my regular J-foot on the machine, and I like to use the piecing stitch on the machine. We're going to be doing 1/4-inch seams. So what I like to use is on my Brother Luminaire, I like to use the Q-tab. So let me pull this around so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to use the Q-tab, and it's going to be Q02. And it's the same stitch on most of the machines. It's the ones with the letter P on them. And then what it does is it moves the needle to the right-hand side so that it's at the 5.5 position. And you can see that down here at the bottom, right here. And then I'm going to run my fabric right along the edge of my foot, the right-hand edge of my foot, to get a 1/4-inch seam. So I like the piecing stitch so I don't have to remove the foot, because I often need to zigzag or something right afterwards, so then I don't have to keep changing feet. Okay, so, and then I've also put in the machine some number 50 weight Pima cotton thread, and it's kind of a light gray, so I thought that would kind of blend in. Light gray is a really good blender color to piece with, so we're going to go ahead and put the little borders on. So the first borders we're going to put on are going to be the longer ones on the side, and those are these little skinny ones. So I've got those cut. They're kind of green, and I'm just going to lay those on top of my right and left hand side here, get them lined up, and then I'm going to stitch with my 1/4-inch seam. And this is on page 6 of the instructions, right under the cutting instructions. This is the little piecing of the top. So we're going to do this. Do my 1/4-inch seam. I'm going to go ahead and tie off on the ends here with my little tie off instead of the back stitch. And then I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam down each side. I'm going to do both sides, and then I'm going to press those open before I do the top and the bottom. A second here, I need to turn my machine up. There we go. It's like, why is it going so slowly? Okay, we'll do both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other side here, and it's this, I think it was 6.5 but like 1.5. So these little corners, I can't remember what size these were. Let me see. It tells me which ones they were. These were 1.25 by 6.5. So these are those little skinny long ones. Cut. All right. Do the other side here. Get them all nice and lined up, and sew up the side. So I kind of sew kind of fast, so hopefully it's not jiggling the camera too much. Do my 1/4 inch seam. All right. And now I'm going to take this over to the iron real quickly, and I'm going to open these up and press them flat. Now be very careful pressing around that heat transfer vinyl. You don't want to touch that with the iron because it will cause it to wrinkle. So just be careful. So I'm going to go ahead and just press those open quickly with my iron before we do the top and the bottom. So give me a second. I'm just going to pause the video while I go over to do that. Okay, so then the next step is going to be using the other border pieces, which were, I have to see the measurements again. I can't remember. They were an odd measurement. 2.25 by 6. These are going to go on the top and the bottom. So these were a little wider. Get this tip down just a little bit more. There we go. And we're going to put these along the top and the bottom. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to line everything up here. And I didn't pin any of these. I just kind of stitched them on. So get these all kind of lined up. Get the edges. And I'm still doing a 1/4 inch seam. And you can use a piecing foot too if you like to use a piecing foot. I just am lazy and don't like to have to switch the foot because I often have to zigzag or something right afterwards and then I have to change. So I just like my piecing stitch. I've also found that if you're doing stuff with lots of triangles and stuff, I think the piecing stitch, it works really well because the foot is longer than most of the piecing feet and it glides over the bumps better. So I learned that when I was doing something that had lots and lots of triangles in it, that everything just seemed to sew better for me with the J foot because it's longer. It glides better. Okay, so I'm just going to put the other one on here, and then we'll do the same thing. I'm going to go over and then I'll press these down, and then we're getting ready to put the back on. And the fringe, we're going to do some fringe. So I did my pillow a little differently than the instructions, so we'll do it. I like fringe. Okay, so there's my top and bottom. So I'm going to go press these out. And again, be very careful not to touch your glitter vinyl because it will wrinkle quite badly if you touch it with the iron. So ask me how I know about that. I have done that before. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press those out then. And then I will be right back. Okay, so on the top of page 7 in the instructions, it gave you a few options of how to do the trim. Now, in one of the options, they gave you, like, they had you put some fringe and make like a little hanger and then put some pom-poms on the bottom. I'm not a super big pom-pom fan, so I decided I wanted fringe on both the top and the bottom of mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some of the fringe trim. They have the little fringe, the tassels and palms, they call it. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this on the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I want to put the fringe. Second here, I need to trim this off. It's kind of got a funny end here. So we'll just trim this off. There we go. And I'm going to put the fringe on the edge here with the fringe in because we're going to be turning this right side out. And I also want to stay away from the from the very corner. I don't want to be in the seam allowance with the fringe, so I'm going to pull it in about 1/4 of an inch. And what works the best for me, actually, I'm going to grab my fabric glue stick. I like those little Soline glue sticks, the little skinny ones. And this is usually how I put this on, is I just put a little glue across the top of the fabric. And that seems to be the best for me to hold it down for me instead of pinning or something. So we're just going to put this in about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. So you want to leave your seam allowance there. And then I'm just going to put this along the edge here. And I've just glued it down. And do this side, and I'm going to cut it off down here and leave myself about 1/4 of an inch from the edge so that it won't get in my seam allowance. So it looks pretty good. Might need to trim that one off just a little bit more, so not sure that I got that one in the 1/4 of an inch here. Just pull it in just a little bit. I think it'll be all right. And press it down onto the glue. And I got a little thing hanging here, so let's get that out of the way. Whoops. Sometimes these little fringes, they like to unravel as you cut them, so you have to kind of trim sometimes to get it the way you want it. Okay, so I've got all my little trim on that end, so let's go down to this end now. And I'm going to get my glue and just go along the edge. I'm not very neat with my glue, sorry guys. And start about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Again, the fringe is going to be on the inside. And then we're going to start about 1/4 of an inch in and press it down into the glue. And I'm going to just probably, I wouldn't even have to. They show you doing a little, you know, like a little stay stitch. So I'll probably do that. Okay, and then I'm come in about 1/4 of an inch, cut it off. There. Okay. Get this little tail out of here. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put my needle back into the center needle position, and I'm going to sew in about 1/8 of an inch just to kind of hold this down so that it doesn't move on me when I'm working with the back. So I'm just going to go ahead and just sew over the trim, and I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch in, doing like a little top stitch just to kind of hold it down so that it won't move for me. And we'll do that on both ends. So let's see here. I think I got this one not quite out far enough. Looks like I need a little glue again. There we go. I think I got a little far from the edge on this one, so we'll put it back down. There we go. And I'm going to stitch this down as well. I think I did the same thing on this one, so we might just redo a little bit before we sew. But I like the fabric glue stick, works really well with working with the fringe, because then it just gives it, it just holds it down so you don't have to try to pin it because it's so hard to pin. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to kind of top stitch this down about 1/8 of an inch in just to hold it. It'll hold it while we're working with the backing. There we go. So this is what I did with mine. Instead of making a little fringe hanger and a a little fringe hanger, I made fringe on both ends. So I like that. Okay, so then the next thing I had to do, since I put some fringe in here, I need to move this fringe in so it won't get caught in my seam allowance. So you can, if you want to, you can, oops, looks like I lost some fringe, so didn't have to worry about that then, did I? Okay, and I didn't tape mine because I have a tendency to pull the fringe out. So what I did is I just pulled my fringe in like this. Pull this back just a little bit. And I pulled it in like this away from the seam allowance and just kind of pushed it in, and it should be fine. Done like that. And you can tape it if you want to. I found that when I taped it, when I untaped it, I had a little trouble with it. I don't know if this is soft. This might be okay to do a little bit. Don't push it down very hard if you tape it, because then it wants to pull it out. So I'm not pushing it down very hard. And that way I know it's not going to get caught in my seam, but just don't press it down too hard on it because it likes to pull it out. And this is the Kimberbell paper tape that I'm doing that with. So I'm just going to tape these corners in just a little bit to keep them from getting stuck in my stitching. But be very careful not to just pat it down. There we go. So it should be all right. All right, I just kind of patted it down. Okay, now I've got my fringe on the top and the bottom, and now I'm going to go ahead, and I've pre-done these, but we need to hem the little the little back pieces. So this is the one that was 3.5. I made it a little bit different, 6 by 3.5, and I did one of the 6-inch sides, and I just turned it over 1/4 of an inch and then 1/4 of an inch again. So we're just going to hem this. So I pressed them earlier. Now I've got my needle in the center again, or still I should say, because I just had, and I'm just going to stitch down the inside edge of this and do a little hem. Okay. And we'll do the other one. And I did the same thing. So this is also on a 6-inch edge. This is the one that was like 9 inches long, or 9.5 maybe. I can't remember. It was either 9 or 9.5. And we're going to hem this one. Like that. Okay. So now we've got our little backs hemmed. So the next step is going to be to put the backs on. So when I did these, I always have to kind of look at the picture, and it seems like they changed the way they do these, from one pillow to another. So this one looks like they put the long one down first and then the short one, but it seems like I've always done the short end first. Let me look at mine. So when I did this one, I put the long end in first, and then I did I did do it the way they said in the picture. So I did do the long end, and then so the long end is going to be on the outside, and I think they do that. I don't think it really matters which way you do it, but I'll do it this way because that's the way they show it in the picture. But they put the long end in first, and you're going to put the raw edges out and these hemmed edges in. So I'm going to put the long edge in on first. And I'm pretty sure that, yeah, that's the way they show it in the picture, with the right sides together. Okay, and you're going to line up all the raw edges. And I am going to have to pin this. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom and put just a couple pins in the bottom to make sure I get this anchored down here. Like that. I'm not the best cutter, so when I go to do these, I often am a little off. So we'll see if I can get it. I'm not the best cutter. Okay. I'll put a pin here and a pin up here. And then we'll do the other side. So you want to line up all your raw edges like that. But we needed this you want this little, this is an envelope back, or they call it an envelope back. So we want it to overlap just a little bit. And I don't think it really matters which way you do this. So you could do it the other way. I've done them both ways, so we'll do it the way that it shows in the picture this time. Okay, and then I'm going to put the shorter one, the shorter side on the other end. And again, line up my raw edges. We'll get the couple of pins in here. Oops. Now there is an overlap. It's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches maybe. And it's right here. So I'm going to double stitch this so that, because there is a little bit of a, a stress there when you're going to put the pillow in. So we want to make sure that that's strong there when we go to put the pillow in. Okay, so it's the little overlaps right here on this one, this side, okay? All right, so I'm going to go back to my 1/4 inch seam, and we're just going to sew all the way around the outside edge. So I'm going to go back to Q02. I think I need a pin up here yet. There we go. Okay. And I like to kind of start where the overlap is so that I get that done right away. So what I do is I go over the overlap. Okay. I go over it, and then I left that pin in so I could see where it is, and then I'm going to back up over it again and then go forward over it again, so that way it's good and strong, because I found that especially when I'm using cotton thread that sometimes that little seam wants to break on me, especially with the cotton thread, because it's not as strong. Okay, so I like to sew over it a couple times. So I'm going to turn the corner here, go along the end. Okay. And we're going to come up to one of those little overlaps again down here. So it's between these two pins right here. So I'm just going to sew down to that pin. Pull that out, and then I'm going to go down to this one, and then I'm going to back up over it, because it just gives it some extra strength. And I know where it's at. Okay. Then we can go forward again. Go around the other side. Okay, I'm getting down here to the bottom. Okay, turn the corner. See how I did here. Sometimes I like I said, I'm not the best cutter in the world, so I have a little I have a little problem sometimes with the backs. Did pretty good with this one, I think. All right, let's go around the corner here, and we're almost done. Go to the other side here, and we'll tie off. I really like envelope backs because then you don't have to hem as much and stuff, so they really are nice. Okay, so here is our little back is on, and now what we're going to do is turn it right side out. So I'll show you my little trick that I use. Get my pins out of the way here. Second, I got one of those cool magnetic pin cushions, so I'll just grab all the pins at the same time. All right, now I'm going to grab also one of my favorite tools is my Floriani Turner tool. That's also up on ShieldSewingCenter.com. If you don't have one of those, that is like the best tool ever. So I'm going to show you my little trick. I do not like to trim these corners, because if you trim across these corners, you will poke through a hole through the center. So what I like to do, my grandma taught me how to do this. I take my first finger, I slide my finger in, and then I pull back the seam allowance and push forward the seam allowance, and I make the perfect corner in the corner, and then I'm going to hold on to that with my thumb, and I'm going to push it out like that. And we're going to have to get rid of the tape here. We'll do this one and pull it down to the seam allowance, push it over to the seam allowance, make the corner, and push it out. And when you do that, you don't have to cut those corners. Okay, and I'm going to carefully pull this tape off so I don't pull on my fringe off. Okay, got one more side here to do. I have a terrible time with this tape. There we go. Okay, there's my fringe. And then what I will do is I'll take my little turner tool, okay, and I'll just tweak the corners so that they're perfect. But see how perfect and square they are? And I didn't have to cut them. So if you cut them, I always go through the corner. And I even sometimes go through the corner with my little pointer tool, you know, without cutting them, but I always do when I do it. So I'm going to do the same thing. Take my first finger up into the next corner. Okay, I'm going to pull the seam allowance back towards my thumb. I'm going to push into the seam allowance, make the corner, and then hold it and push it out the other side. And do the last one. I've always loved this method. It works really well. And the corners turn perfect, especially with the turning tool, because that's really helped a lot. Excuse me, I'll need to take a drink. Okay, now I'm going to carefully get this tape. That's why I don't always tape, but when I'm sewing, sometimes it's harder than it is when I'm embroidering. So I needed to tape so I wouldn't get it caught. But just be very careful when you take it off so you don't pull your fringe off. There we go. Excuse me, I just need to take a drink. My throat's dry. All right. So there is our fringe. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this over to the iron, and I'm going to press it a little bit, and then I'll show you. I'll get the my little pillow form and we'll put it in. So we're almost done. I just need to do a little pressing. Now be very careful when you press, because you don't want to press on this glitter vinyl. So I'm just going to kind of press along the edges. And then what I do is when we put the pillow form in, then I'll take it over and I'll actually press the back so it's nice and smooth after I put the pillow form in, because then we don't have to worry about getting, you know, the glitter all messy with the hot iron. So I'm just going to take this over to the ironing board and do a little press, and then I'll be back and we'll put the pillow form in. Okay, so I'm ready to put my little pillow form in. And so I went back and looked at some of the other pillows, and most of the pillows were done with the long piece on the outside. So I think it's a little easier to get the pillow form in. So I don't think it really matters. I looked at another one I did earlier today in a class, and it's done the other way. So I don't know that it really matters. It just depends on which way you want to do it. So now my little pillow form, just so you know, I like to make my pillow forms. And so I cut, this is a piece of muslin, a nice, you know, quality muslin. You could use Kona cotton or just any plain fabric. And I use, you know, I fill them with fiberfill. But this is, I cut it 6 inches wide by 10 inches long, and then I take a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. So they end up being then the same size as the pillow, which is 5.5 by 9.5. So, so cut it 6 by 10, and that's how I make all my little pillow forms for the size one. We'll talk about the pillow form for the 8 by 8s too. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to slip this into the pillow here. It is a little bit of a trick because they're kind of, you know, long and skinny, so I always have a little trouble getting them in there. But once you kind of get started, then they go in pretty easily. So put this in there. There we go. It's going. I'm going to have to put it in my lap for a second so I can get it get it down to the bottom. There we go. Then I can pull it up. I always have to kind of push it in down to the bottom and then pull it back a little bit because I have a little trouble getting them in usually. And that's why the other reason why I like to make my own pillow forms, because they're a little bit smaller than the ones you get that you buy, and then they go in just a little bit easier to the pillows. So they fit just a little bit, not quite as snugly. Okay, so then I got put the pillow in there, and then you've got this. It's just a little easier to get them in. And like I said, you can do either way. I think with your envelope back, I don't think it really matters. Okay. Then what I'm going to do after I'm all done here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this now to my iron, and now I'm going to press the back so that the back's nice and smooth, because I don't. That way I'm not touching any of my glitter vinyl, and it doesn't get all wrinkly. So there's our little first little January rectangle pillow. Isn't that cute? So he's awfully cute. I like his fringe on the top and the bottom, and I'll give him a little press yet on the back so he's nice and smooth. But there's the first little pillow for January, and I'll do another video for the square one for January. So then you'll have your two January pillows to do during the Christmas break, and then we will do the February pillows in January. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email me. You can text me through Messenger. You can ask me on Facebook. Or give me a call at the store, whichever you like. So hopefully you enjoyed the first little January pillow, the rectangle pillow. There's no place like home. Thanks, everybody. Bye.